So the Boox Tab X is this new 13.3-inch tablet that has this big roomy screen and plenty of room to work. It sounds like a perfect fit to use as an external monitor with the e-ink screen and low reflectivity, except for Boox didn't put an HDMI port on it, so getting it to work as an external monitor is no easy feat. How could we use it as an external monitor, and how realistic is it as one? So I've got 4 different ways to try, and at the end we'll figure out, is it realistic to use as an external monitor? So while trying to figure this out, I've tried 3 different approaches. I've tried Duet Pro, I've tried VNC, and then I've also now tried a capture card. So let's first start with Duet Pro, which is a paid app that you install both on your Mac and on your tablet, and then it talks either over USB or over Wi-Fi. And in my case, I've tried it a number of times over USB with not a lot of luck, but let me show you how that works. So I'm gonna quit out of vanilla because there's an issue with vanilla. Let's go to Duet. And so just for the sake of demonstration, I will grab a USB. But again, this has not worked for me in any of the attempts that I've tried it. And it says no Android device found. Oh, of course. Of course it's gonna work now that I try it. Okay, so we have Duet Pro running over USB-C, and my options are Retina, 60 FPS. Let's go 60 FPS, high quality Retina at 1512 by 982, which is its recommendation. And then, so let's take a look at that. Hopefully you should be able to see it. It's got a bit of jitter, and that is due to mirroring the display. So if I go over here and I refresh the screen, the quality is not bad. You can't zoom on Duet, which is not necessarily a problem. So aside from a bit of artifacting, over wired is not bad. So let's do a little bit of typing. And I'll put these on screen so that you can see them side by side, but there's definitely a bit of latency. And although I'm largely not affected by latency, there's definitely some there. I will say, I think it is better wired versus wireless. And definitely a lot less artifacting over wired versus wireless. Still a little bit of artifacting there next to the text, but much better. So I don't know why it decided to work now after not working the entire rest of the time I've tested it, but there you go. It does indeed work. And the quality is not bad. I wish I could set some of my settings around contrast. Find the contrast a little lacking. The other thing I've run into with Duet is I've only succeeded at getting it to run in mirrored mode. Let me try it again, not in mirrored mode, and see what it does. And so it's thinking, it's adjusting resolution. And this seems to be the problem I've run into the entire time I've tried using Duet, which is when you try to unmirror the screen, you never get an image back on the tablet. You can see from within macOS that it's trying to create a second screen. You can see that it's honoring it as a second screen. Oh, hold on. Did it succeed? No, it did not succeed. So yeah, like Obsidian is highlighted on this theoretical second screen, but I can't actually see it over there. Let me try giving it a resolution. So if I right click here and go to show list and set it to maybe 1640 by 1234, I can see it attempting to do something. while that's doing its thing, yeah, this has been sort of the limitation, is trying to get it to work as a true second monitor, because the thing you need with macOS, especially with one of the newer MacBook Pros, is the high refresh rate causes Duet to flicker, causes just the books in general to flicker if it's mirroring something higher than 60 FPS. I don't know the source of it, but it becomes a problem. And yeah, so I've got Obsidian theoretically focused on the other screen, but I can't see it. So that's the limitation with Duet, is you can really only mirror, and when you mirror, you get this flicker. Even if you turn off high refresh rate on your Mac, it still flickers. So let me try to demonstrate that. So if I go back into mirror mode, I would expect that this is now going to work. And sure enough, it works. And then if I go to 60 FPS, you'll still see, yeah. So you still get some flickering. It's not constant, but especially during movement, it flickers quite a bit. Let's go back over to Obsidian, and I'll just manually refresh that. Let's get rid of this right click. This is with 60 FPS. And you see a ton of artifacting around the text. That is probably my biggest frustration with Duet, is I'm sensitive to that artifacting for whatever reason. So I'll do some typing just so you can see the artifacting around the text. My belief is that that's not actually from the tablet, that's from Duet. And just, I guess, to demonstrate that, I'm going to switch over to VNC, which is the second way to do this. So I'm going to quit out of Duet on my Mac. And so I've quit out of it there. Let's quit out here. Now we're going to go over to VNC. So VNC is a screen sharing and screen control protocol that's baked into a lot of systems, and the Mac has it as well. So if I go into the sharing preferences, you just need to turn on remote management, go to this little info bubble, and go to computer settings, say VNC viewers may control screen with password, and set a password. And then under options, in my case, I've turned on all of these, and you'll see that on my local network, I can remote control this computer at this IP address. So if I go back to my Boox Tab X, I can open VNC viewer. If I go to local, I should already have that local IP address and port 5900 already in there, and now I can connect. And so I have that VNC password already set, and now I just, oh. That's the first time I've had it not connect first try. Brandon from the future here. Turns out I think the firewall on my MacBook was preventing VNC from working after it had previously worked. So we're going to try this again. So I've got remote management turned on this machine. It's on 192.168.1.118 now instead of 115. And so let's give that a go. And you'll see that that connects. I've got a very secure password for this. And you're going to see that it's going to begin to mirror my desktop. Now, I still need to log in with my username and password. I'm going to do that off screen. Okay, so now I'm logged in, and you'll see that I have mirroring across both of my devices. And so if I go back to my MacBook, again, I'm really just using this to test latency, and I can force refresh, and you'll see that the quality is actually really good. And here. There's definitely some latency. It's not perfect, but it's free, and there's no real artifacting. Yeah, feels pretty good. Feels pretty good. Let's see, are there any settings that I can tweak? Oh, and yeah, you can use your cursor. It works more like a mouse than touchscreen. But overall, pretty good. You can zoom in. You'll see the quality is pretty good. One key limitation, not necessarily with VNC, but just more generally, the Mac doesn't like outputting the size of the Boox Tab X for whatever reason. There isn't a native screen resolution that matches up perfectly to this device. And that's why you'll see that there's always a little bit of anti-aliasing, even when it's not being introduced by the screen sharing software. So just something to be aware of. There's an opportunity to improve that in the future. And then when I'm ready to stop, I just hit the X to disconnect. And now it's disconnected. With that said, neither of these were my preferred way to use the Boox Tab X as a second monitor. So let me show you my preferred way, which is by using an HDMI capture card. So what we're gonna need is an HDMI capture card. In this case, I have a Razer Ripsaw X, but from what I've read, it sounds like some cheaper ones will also work. I just happen to have this because I use it for creating these videos. I also have a Camlink. Let me grab that. I have an Elgato Camlink. I could not get this to work, and I'm not really sure why. But just note that if you're buying one to try and make this work, avoid the Camlink, although I love it in other cases. So what we're gonna need an OTG cable, and in this case, I have a dongle that does a bunch of things. We're gonna plug that in. We're gonna give it external power. I think the Ripsaw probably uses more power than it can pull from the Boox Tab X, and so we need external power to make this work. We're gonna give that external power, and then we're gonna plug in our capture card. Let's start by saying I really wish Boox had just put HDMI directly on the device, either over USB-C or a dedicated mini HDMI, but they didn't. So this is what we have to do. So HDMI cable, that's gonna go into the side of my Mac. And then the other side goes into my capture card. And you'll see that the Boox Tab X is asking me, do we want to open the USB camera app whenever we connect this device? I don't want that. So let's go in and we're going to open it manually, and I will open the USB camera app. There are a number of apps that theoretically support USB cameras, and that's what an HDMI capture card produces. It's just a USB video device. And so do we want to allow this app to look at the feed? Yes, we do. And shortly we should have a video feed. And note that I have the free version, so we have ads. So please ignore my ads. Plug in my HDMI. Let's go to displays on my Mac and see what it's doing. And it looks like it's trying to give it a dedicated input. Let's do the same thing we did before. Let's start with built-in. So there's mirroring, and all right, so you'll notice we get that little bit of flash and judder. Hopefully you can see that on camera. And it's not great, it's not ideal. Let's switch over to ideal for this device. Honestly, I think I preferred it when it was set to ideal for the Mac. So let's actually put this back to what it was. Optimized for MacBook Pro. Looks pretty good aside from the jitter. Let's go to 60 FPS and see what that does. Still get the jitter. So one thing we can do, you can go to this ... menu and go to video format, and we can set it's 1920 by 1080 60, which is what we want. If you don't want these ads, you can get the paid version, but I'm not quite sold yet on whether I would actually use this. This is more for science at this point. So, but let's actually try and use it. So let me go into E-Ink Center and I'll show you my settings. We're currently in ultra fast, but I'll show you some of the other settings as well. I've got manual refresh set to swipe up from the bottom. And you'll see that my cursor looks pretty good. So let's drop down, and I'll put these side by side so that you can actually see the refresh rate. But let's type. Yeah, I mean, this feels pretty good. I mean, definitely slightly faster on looking at my MacBook Pro, and my MacBook Pro is running at 120 hertz. But this isn't bad. This is definitely within a level of latency where I don't think it causes significant drop in performance. Here, I guess let's do a typing test. All right, let's try it. All right, 1 minute test. Let's do medium text. I think this is saying 58 words per minute when doing it on the Mac. And let's do it one more time, and I'm going to try it doing it completely based on watching on the books. So let's go. Okay, so I can finally see my results here. So the first test that I did on the Mac was 58 words per minute. The second test that I did on the books was 56 words per minute. And then this third test I did, because I couldn't see the results from the last time, were 61. So would I say my typing is as good on the books? Maybe not quite as good, but it's not night and day different. And it's not going to tank your accuracy. It's not going to tank your speed if you're a fluent typist as it is. So would I rather have 144 hertz or 120 hertz? Yeah, I totally would. But if you have eye issues and you really think you want to use e-ink, or if you wanted to try it outside, you know what? This is an option. You do have to pay $6 for the app to do it. You have to have a capture card, but those have gotten relatively cheap. Just get one that'll do 60 FPS, and it's pretty doable. Am I going to use it? Probably not. I am very, very sensitive to latency, and this gets the latency close, but I would rather use 120 hertz all day, every day. I use 120 hertz on this monitor up here. I use 120 hertz on the other monitor. I like high refresh rate. That's just my personal preference. If you just want to write, it's really good. Could also see it for coding, although losing out on syntax highlighting is a big loss in my opinion. I'd rather have syntax highlighting, but it is doable if you're willing to work at it. If your intention is to have a great typing experience, there is one other way to do this, and it's not quite using it as a monitor, but it does a similar thing, which is if you want the lowest of latency and the best that the Boox Tab X can do, you're actually probably best off using the native Android apps themselves. So let me grab a quick stand and throw this on a stand. I'm just gonna plug in a USB-C keyboard. You could also do this with a Bluetooth keyboard. Just happens to be most of the keyboards I have that I want to use are all USB-C. Let's just use my daily driver keyboard. We're powered, so we can do that. Put a keyboard over here. And again, this looks like a mess because it is a mess. But again, just because I prefer this keyboard. The Pro here is excellent latency. We can get, I don't want to call it none because that's unrealistic, but you can get very, very low latency this way. So let's pull up Obsidian, for example. And we'll start a text document, and hopefully you can see that. But here we go. Feels great. The key response feels good. It definitely feels slightly faster than over the HDMI capture card. Not crazy faster, but ever so slightly faster. So if you're trying to reduce latency while using an e-ink tablet, that is probably your best bet, is either USB or Bluetooth keyboard into a dedicated Android app, and that will get you on the right track. With that said, that can be a bit of a pain. If you're just doing type text, then yes, your needs are relatively low there, but if you're trying to do something like coding, getting your development environment running on Android is no easy task, and there's a ton of trade-offs that you're going to have to make to get there. Just remember that this may not be realistic, and that's not necessarily your fault. They could have put an HDMI port on here and made this really painless. They chose not to, or they could do a firmware update theoretically and let this happen, but it's just not there yet. With that said, the HDMI capture card is not bad. It's a handful of cables and some hardware that you're going to need, but if you're dead set on doing this, it is doable. The HDMI capture card is probably my preferred and the one that I would be most likely to do. With that said, I'm not sure I'm going to do it just because I like high refresh and I use my e-ink device in a slightly different use case than the one that we're demonstrating here. Duet Pro I found a bit unreliable and also don't like that it's paid and a subscription. VNC, the latency was a bit too high, but I did like that it was free. It's kind of annoying that when I was trying to test it for this video, it decided not to work. But I think the HDMI capture card is probably the only option that I see is actually somewhat realistic, aside from going with the dedicated Android apps and putting a keyboard with it. With that said, I also wish they had done a keyboard folio for this device. This form factor lends itself really well to being a dedicated device with a keyboard, and we just don't get that. Obviously, you can pair your own Bluetooth keyboard or your own USB-C keyboard, and that works great, but it would be nice on the go. I think where this gets really nice is that you could take it outside on a nice day and just unfold it and go type or write and just be one with nature, throw in some earbuds, and just focus. And that's a use case I could really see myself doing. But right now it's a little bit too involved, especially for me because I just don't have a Bluetooth keyboard that I really love. This is the keyboard I want to use and it's not Bluetooth. So those are my thoughts on trying to use the Boox Tab X as an external monitor. Would have been a lot easier if they had put a dedicated HDMI port on it or had it work HDMI over USB-C, but you can do it with a capture card if you're dead set on doing it. With that said, thank you for watching to the end of the video, and I'll have a playlist of my other e-ink content if you want to go check that out. Also, if you have any questions or if you want to chat further, come by the Knowledge Workers Discord. I'll have a link down in the description. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video.